We begin in both Washington and the Middle East as the White House walks back key parts of President Trump's proposal to take over the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, also under fire, the Trump administration's plans to cut federal aid and the federal workforce. And now we're seeing protests. That's what's on your screen right now. To President Trump's policies growing louder all over the country, from California to Texas to Kentucky and Ohio.
The law is the law, and President Trump needs to obey all parts of that law. And Elon Musk, he may get to be a dictator at Tesla, and he is trying to play dictator here in our nation's capital, but he does not get to ignore the law, and we need to shut down the Musk operation.
Elon Musk's team has been working to shrink the federal workforce, offering widespread buyouts, with the National Security Agency the latest to join the list overnight. According to the Office of Personnel Management, more than 40,000 federal workers have taken the offer, with today being the deadline to accept. But Department of Education officials have warned staff the deals could be rescinded. For more on all these major headlines from Washington to the Middle East, we've got team coverage. We have NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor, and we have NBC News correspondent Yasmin Vossoughian. She's in Tel Aviv for us. Good morning to both of you. Yamiche, I'll start with you. So there's been a lot of back and forth this week when it comes to DOGE. That's the Department of Government Efficiency, led by Musk, about its mission, its level of access to government systems. Now, the Trump administration has now agreed to some guardrails on this, on Elon Musk's power. What can you tell us, and what's the White House saying about it ultimately?
That's right. Well, there has been a lot of criticism of DOGE and their access to things like the Treasury system. But yesterday, the White House press secretary said that that access is read only. She was also asked about conflicts of interest that might come up because of Elon Musk. And she said that he would recuse himself and essentially step away if there were any conflicts of interest. The other thing that's interesting here is that since Elon Musk has become so close to President Trump, there's been a lot of talk of whether or not he's sort of co-president and whether or not he has more say in things and is having too much influence. But President Trump has said he is not co-president and that he is doing whatever the president is reporting and telling him to do. So it's a very interesting thing that the president is really saying, look, I'm checking Elon Musk and he is only having the authority that I'm giving him.
Yamiche, also the White House trying to walk back the president's just stunning proposal for the U.S. to take control of Gaza. This follows backlash from lawmakers, also leaders all around the world. The plan also rejected by the Palestinian Authority president, who's been a longtime opponent of Hamas. Tell us more. What's the administration saying about this right now?
Well, it's really interesting because White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, she was sort of walking this back and sounding different, though, than President Trump, who is really doubling down on this and saying that the U.S. is going to have and wants to have control over the Gaza Strip. But let's first play some sound of the White House Press Secretary yesterday, when she was asked about putting boots on the ground, U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza. Take a listen.
It's been made very clear to the president that the United States needs to be involved in this rebuilding effort to ensure stability in the region for all people. But that does not mean boots on the ground in Gaza. It does not mean American taxpayers will be funding this effort. It means Donald Trump, who is the best deal maker on the planet, is going to strike a deal with our partners in the region.
Now, President Trump had insinuated that boots on the ground might be a possibility during that press conference with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister. But he is walking back that part, but not the part about the U.S. wanting to take over the Gaza Strip. Just in the last few minutes, he posted on. I'm going to read part of it to you. He said the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. The Palestinians, like Chuck Schumer, would have been already resettled in a far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region. He went on to say no soldiers by the U.S. would be needed. Stability for the region would reign. So even though he's saying that the U.S. wouldn't be involved in any sort of fighting or conflict on the ground, he is still saying that the U.S. would essentially be taking over authority of the Gaza Strip. And he's been saying he wants to build things that sound to some critics like a resort. Of course, there's a lot of backlash to this, and a lot of people saying that this is simply not something that the United States can actually do, including, of course, leaders in the region.
Yasmin, let's bring you in here and talk about some of those leaders. So we saw Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appear to back Trump's plan when he was right there with him after their meeting this week.
Yeah.
How has this chapter played out in Israel, and has it called into question the Prime Minister's hold on power generally?
The conversation has actually really shifted away from Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu's hold on power. I think since the beginning, since October 7th, and even before that time, the Prime Minister was extremely unpopular, especially in a liberal bastion like Tel Aviv. Since October 7th, especially, his unpopularity has in fact grown. There was this thought and this idea, as we had kind of been covering this war for the last year and a half, that once this war ended, that Netanyahu would also lose his position of power. And it was possibly one of the reasons why he was prolonging this war, to prolong his power. Even amongst the family forum here, the families of the hostages that were being held in Gaza, they felt as if Netanyahu was making decisions that were putting the lives of their family members who were being held hostage by Hamas in peril. And now, though, the conversation has shifted away from the release of the hostages and the ceasefire negotiations and more towards corralling behind, really, Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, since, of course, the declaration of President Trump making and saying, essentially, that Gazans should leave Gaza. And that is because one of the reasons why Netanyahu was beginning to lose power, and it seemed as if it was more up for grabs, is he was losing the really right wing of his cabinet, right, which he needed to remain in power. And now it seems that right wing is coming back around him because they were against the ceasefire negotiations in the first place and striking that ceasefire deal. But now that they see that there's a possibility that Palestinians could leave Gaza, Netanyahu, it seems, has resecured for this moment, guys, his power.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.